Happy days, happy people, and welcome to another anatomy lecture with Ulu Yoga. My name is Cody, and today we're going to be speaking about the spine, and more so, the lower back. So we should already know a lot about the spine if you've been doing yoga for a while, if you've been teaching for a while, or if you've watched any of the anatomy videos from the 200-hour course, or from any 200-hour course. And we know that the spine is this awesome S-shaped bundle of vertebra that connects everything together into a nice movement, waving movement, and also what provides most of the kinetic energy for our body. We're going to be focusing a little bit less on the upper body and more on the lower part, speaking a little bit more about the lumbar spine and the sacral spine and how these guys interplay, and then also speaking about the big kind of exclamation point of lower back pain. So lower back pain is something that many students, many clients, maybe many of you might have. And we're going to speak about possible causes, possible preventions, and just gaining a deeper understanding of what lower back pain looks like. Then we're also going to bring into play some asana, where my lovely assistant is going to jump in and we're going to demonstrate some different poses that we can do to alleviate lower back pain, what to be careful of when doing certain back bends and forward folds to not cause lower back pain or any back pain at all. And then also talk about some modifications you can give to your daily practice of yoga and also just your daily practice of being to help you set yourself up for a greater posture in your spine. And this is the word I want to start off with, is posture. So remember, posture does not mean having a straight spine. Posture doesn't mean having a straight anything. Posture means balance. So having balance in between the vertebra, the different curves that we're dealing with, and having them distribute the weight that is being put on by your body and by gravity around it, and teaching your body to react with good posture. So for the lower back, let's say, good posture is when your sacral spine is not popping out too much, right? When this is happening, we call this lordosis. Again, it happens primarily where the sacral spine meets the lumbar spine at around like L5 meeting S1. And it's when our pelvis starts to come out. It looks a little bit like this. So if this is me kind of normally in a posture state of spine, if I were to drop into lordosis, you see this curve starts to appear, right? This is a curve we want to start to try and get rid of. Not only in our practices, but also in our day-to-day lives. Because if we stand constantly with this curve, then we're going to constantly be putting pressure forward on the vertebra where the curve of the lumbar is taking the most pressure. This is going to start to cause strain, it's going to start to cause damage, and it's just going to start to cause imbalance inside the body itself. So we need to learn to rein that back in. And we're going to learn about what is causing this and ways that we can do that. First things first though, I want to talk about this principle that I've mentioned before in other lectures, and it's the where you think it isn't principle. And I want to just add one more thing to it, because the more that I've been teaching and the more that I've been experiencing as a teacher, and you'll experience this too, is that nothing is for certain. So the last thing that I want to add to this is where it isn't, but sometimes it is, right? I know that seems paradoxical, but this is just the fact that sometimes where you think it isn't, and that the pain that is occurring in your lower back is due to some tightness in the hamstrings. But sometimes where the pain is, it is. And the pain in your lower back is being caused by that exact point in your lower back. It's hard to say. And this is going to be a little bit of the theme and the intention that I want us to take throughout the entire of today's lecture. This is all very explorative. So the things I'm going to say, I want you to explore them. I don't want you to take them for granted or for certain. These might be the causes. If you've ever had the chance to look at an anatomy chart or even a skeleton, but rather look at an anatomy chart and to see the complexities of the lower back, you will understand why nothing can be said for certain. Because there's so many different variables to take into consideration that we never are too sure, and it's kind of very difficult to be too sure what is causing lower back pain at any given time. Again, this also changes according to time and also according to posture. So one cause might be for a certain posture, and another cause might be for another posture. But what we can work with is this principle of exploration and alleviating the pain through posture, through taking up a certain position, through self-awareness again, this kinesthetic awareness that I want us to start to build, and learning how to put it in a situation where there's so many options, but just by feeling and by understanding small bodily principles, we can bring our body into more balanced states and into equilibrium. Cool. So first, let's speak about the pain itself. So what could possibly be causing the pain on a very broad level? Well, on a very broad level, this is what we're just dealing with when we're speaking about the back in general. So number one, muscularity. So it could be muscular pain, right? There are obviously a lot of stabilizing muscles that surround the lower spine, and these, if strained, if tense, if pulled, if weak, can cause pain in the area. What can we do to help with this? Again, it depends. We might need to strengthen them. We might need to engage certain areas, or we might need to release. We don't know. It's very hard to tell, because I've had two types of people come to me with muscular pain in the lower back. I've had one person come to me who's maybe a little bit old, hasn't done much exercise, and is suffering from lower back pain. Her case was that she needed to strengthen her lower back. And so we did very subtle strengthening, we did some core improvement exercises, and by the time we were done, her lower back pain was better, if not all gone. The second person that came to me was someone who was highly involved in CrossFit and was very, very muscular, very, very strong, had a really, really strong sense of core engagement and abdominal expressiveness. And she also had lower back pain. And for her case, it was actually her abdomen that were pulling and were not releasing. And because she focused so much on core strength that she never was relaxed in the core area. And this was doing this, constantly pulling in at her spine, which then made the other muscles on the other end have to constantly fight to pull back. And this caused pain in the lower back on the other side. So she needed to relieve pain. And so for her, we just did some stretching, brought a little bit more softness and yin into her practice, and this alleviated her back pain. So this is why it's difficult to say, even from a muscularity point of view. And for both of them, I didn't attack a single muscle group. To be honest, I didn't know exactly where the muscles were or the specific muscles that were causing the pain. But I just had a feeling that the one was due to weakness and the one was due to overstrengthening. So I just relaxed all the areas around the muscles, and that got rid of any of the pain caused by overstrengthening. And I just increased core strength generally, and then this got rid of any pain caused from weakness. So again, being too specific is sometimes not necessary and can also just lead to an analysis that we don't really need to go into and can waste some energy. Next thing is a disc herniation. So again, we're speaking about muscles, but when we speak about the spine itself, we're speaking about vertebra on vertebra, and the vertebra are tiny little bones or big bones, and in between them we have these things called intervertebral discs or IVDs. These intervertebral discs are made of this gelatinous type structure, mix of collagen, mix of elasticin, and inside of them is a nucleus. What happens when a disc herniates is this nucleus, this little ball in this disc pops out. And this happens from, again, maybe extreme stress on the spine or repetitive imbalance in the spine that starts to cause the disc slowly to bulge and then eventually herniate. So a full herniation is when the ball has pretty much popped out of the intervertebral disc, and this is extremely painful. If this has happened, then you need to go for medical treatment and you need to rehabilitate yourself. And there's a lot of things that your physiotherapists and your doctors are going to prescribe you, but it's something that, at least for yoga's sake right now, we don't really want to deal with. So just know that if this has happened to you, or if you're dealing with someone that this has happened, make sure you get the advice of a medical practitioner. The next one is a bulging disc. So a bulging disc is just before the herniation, and this is something we just need to be careful of. Again, same thing, excess weight being bared on the vertebra, which makes the intervertebral disc start to bulge up, kind of like a hose pipe that is kind of being pressured too much with water, and it starts to pump out the one end. What we can do with this is start to alleviate pressure in that area by not doing any high risk back bends or forward folds or even standing positions that might put excess strain on this specific area of the body. The next thing is the sciatica. So sciatica comes from this nerve disorder that happens when there's, again, too much compression in the lower back and even in the hips and legs. This starts to cause a pressure on the nerve, and this pressure on the nerves starts to create an immense amount of pain. Here we can start to relieve the muscles. So relieving the muscles means doing hip openers and going into all the hip releases that I spoke about in the previous video. But it also means starting to tap into the lower back a little bit and starting to increase lower back decompression and starting to relieve any sort of pain that might be compensated for by the lower back when doing specific movements. And we'll speak about this when we get a little bit more asana specific and correcting the lower back in our general day-to-day lives. These are the four main ones that I've decided to speak about because they're also the most common ones. Other lower back things can just come from, again, like I said, simple strains, simple sprains, moving too quickly, moving when not warm, or being too stagnant and building up too much tension, or bearing too much weight in the lower back region and allowing for the lower back to be the main bearer of that weight. But the important thing when coming back to any lower back pain is asking certain questions. So the first question I have written down here is when. When does the lower back pain occur? Is it all the time? Is it when you're in a specific pose? Is it when you're doing a certain thing? Is it after a certain thing? This can help you. Again, the lower back is so complicated. It's so hard to know exactly what's going on. But if you can answer this question, you can start to, at least from a lifestyle perspective or from a movement perspective, figure out what's maybe causing it. So if you're going into a back bend and this is causing the pain, maybe it's a camel pose, maybe it's an upward facing dog, then you can start to play in this area and explore different variations of the pose, or just removing the pose completely from your practice if it's always causing you pain. So when are you getting it? What type of pain is it? Right? So what type of pain are you feeling? Is it a sharp pain? Is it a pain that is dull? Does it seem to be a pain in the spine? Is it around the spine? Is it muscular? Again, these are questions you're going to have to ask yourself, and it's very difficult for me or anyone else to know. This will also start to help you determine what you need to do. If it's muscular, you might need some release. If it's more in the joints, then you might need some stabilization. If it's in the spine itself, then you might have already pulled something. And just playing with these different thoughts and using them to help create a more fuller picture of what's going on in your lower back, again, without going into the complexities of how the lower back works too much. Does the pain move? So sometimes if you're experiencing this pain maybe on the right side, just next to the sacral spine, and then you do a twist and it goes to the left side, or maybe you do something and it goes to the leg. Is the pain moving? This will also help you figure out if it's moving, it's more than likely a muscular pain, a tension or a knot that is just being sent from muscle to muscle, depending on how you move your body. And figuring this out will then start to allow you to focus on that area where the pain is being caused and release it. This can happen through myofascial release, where you start to apply compression on the fascial tissue itself, whether it be through rolling or through just applying gentle compression for long periods of time. You can start to flatten out this knot and it'll relieve this type of pain. And then the last thing to think about is what alleviates the pain. So is there something that you can do that does actually make the pain go away? Is the pain there and then every time you crack your back, then the pain is gone? Or when you do a wheel, the pain is gone? Or when you even do like a hamstring stretch, the pain is gone? Playing with what alleviates the pain is also going to teach you what is going on in your body. And don't limit it to that area. Like I said, where you think it is, it might not be. So if you're having lower back pain and you've tried all the lower back movements that you can to get rid of the pain, maybe it's time to think about the hips. Try some movements in the hips. Try some movements in pigeon pose. Try some relief even of the upper body. Try release the shoulders. Remember, we're all connected in a very much of a web-like fashion. And if there's a pain here, then it could be pulling so much that it's causing a pain here. and you might need to relieve that before you can relieve that. So try different things and figure out what alleviates the pain for you. These are some general questions you can ask yourself or students if they come to you with lower back pain, or if you have lower back pain, to figure out what you could possibly do to help it. Now we're going to speak a little bit about the muscles that could possibly be causing lower back pain. I'm going to point to them a little bit on the body, some of them the most important ones and the major ones, and we're going to work with some asanas that then address these muscles and how they can help us alleviate more lower back pain. So the first one, and for me one of the most important one, is the psoas. So it's the psoas major. There's the psoas minor, which is a smaller one, but the psoas major is the one that runs along from the femur all the way up into your lower back. So it crosses over, floop, through the pelvic cradle and into your lower back. This guy, if tight, is going to obviously cause so much compression in your lower back. Again, if we just have a look at the skeleton, so it runs probably somewhere from here all the way up the body. It's quite a big muscle into the lower back, right? And even through and into the lumbar spine. So it's not only sacral, but it's also lumbar. It's got a huge connection to the spine. So if there's any tension here, then this movement, even the movement of my leg going forward, is going to pull on my lower back. And any movements of my leg, of my lower back, moving forward, is going to pull on my hamstring. And this small muscle tightness here is why your lower back can affect your hamstrings, why your lower back can affect your knees, why your lower back can even affect how your hips internally or externally rotate. Because this muscle runs from here, bloop, all the way through and attaches to here. So we want to learn how to release that muscle. And again, if we've done the hip opening lecture and we've spoken more about that, you will remember that releasing the psoas is something that we can do through a lot of leg work. And this can then help alleviate pain in the lower back. So you might notice that if you do too much leg work, maybe you run a lot, maybe you do a lot of stretching in the leg, maybe you do a lot of strengthening in the leg, it can cause a lot of lower back pain too. So alleviate that by just starting to include more leg opening, leg releasing exercises in your daily routine. Next one we have is the iliacus. So the iliacus, again, probably mentioned this in the hip opening lecture that we speak about, is again on the iliac crest. So once again, starting at the top of this pelvis, and it moves onto the lower back. So it attaches the hip to the lower back, essentially. This is where any sort of compensation in the lower back occurs. So you're doing a pigeon maybe, and then your hip starts to blunk, bring itself backwards. This is also what's being activated when we tuck in the tailbone slightly, is this iliacus is pulling the lower back slightly in. And it's creating this kind of like inward movements of the tailbone that allows for a slight separation of the pelvis, which then creates more space for the lower back to move. So remember this idea of space and what we've spoken about before, how whenever we're releasing something, we're creating space for something else to move into. So with the iliacus, you're using this as a way to pull your lower back slightly in between the pelvic girdle, and then this is creating more space for your lower back to move in once it goes out, once the tailbone starts to move out. This is a very powerful movement for you because it is something that can start to alleviate pain on a very small level, but then can reach greater alleviations later. And it's also a very hard muscle to get to. That's why we just try and think of it as this kind of pelvic tilt. And there's no like exact way to stretch it, again, other than doing things like pigeons and more hip openers as well. Next, we got the transverse abdomina. So the transverse abdomina is this muscle that runs pretty much from the top of the iliac crest transverse, so it means across the abdomen, and connects onto the spine on the other side. So again, if we just look at Mr. Skeleton over here, it runs from here, bloop, and it goes to the other side. And then you have one running the other side too. So when this is tight, you can imagine it's also pulling in on the body. So good ways to attack any transverse muscles, so muscles that are transversing from one side of the body to the other, is any sort of spinal twist. So whether we be doing Madhyachasana A, B, or C, whether we're doing a reclined spinal twist, anything like this, we're starting to attack these muscles and relieve them. Again, bring awareness to them, bring engagements to them, but then allowing for some sort of release afterwards. Next we have is the obliques. So the obliques are also a core muscle, right? So the obliques are these side muscles on the side here that then also keep the spine stable. So all of these are stabilizing in a sense. The psoas not so much, the iliacus not so much, but the transverse abdominis and the obliques and the glutes as well are all stabilizing muscles. And these are ones we can talk about when we're speaking about strengthening the lower back. So strengthening the obliques is going to help you gain better posture. Strengthening the transverse abdomen is going to help you keep that tailbone tuck that we want. And strengthening the glutes is also going to help provide more stability for the lower back from the pelvis region. The obliques, however, also need to be stretched. So side stretching is probably one of the most underrated styles of stretching and doesn't get as much attention as it should in a yoga practice. So side stretching just literally means taking the side body and stretching it out, whether it be a simple movement like this, or whether it be a trikonasana when you're putting your foot out and going into a full triangle pose. Anything that is stretching out the obliques is called a side body stretch. And again, it's because if you look at the body, we're always constantly compressing ourselves down, like an accordion, right? You know those little accordions that play music with the pianos? Our body is like this, poof, a pluff down accordion. And if accordion stays like this for too long, it can make no sound, right? How we get it to make sound is by opening it up and letting the air kind of flow through it. This is the same for the body. So if you want your body to resonate more in harmony, you can think of it as the same idea. You want to start to get more airflow and genuine flow, especially in the abdominal region, which is very much like an accordion, even in the fact of how the lungs work in correspondence with the intestinal and digestive system. Is the air comes in and out, and if you're super tight here, it means your breath is going to be very compressed. But the more side body you open up, the more space you give your lungs, and this space also then goes into the lower back, and the more space your lower back has to move, and the less potential there are for any of these type of pains that could come up. So that's for the obliques. Then we had the piriformis. Again, we mentioned this in the hips, and also the glutes afterwards. And again, this is also about release and or strengthening. So a lack of glute strength means that your lower back is going to be taking a lot of the brunt of the force of gravity around it. So every time I walk, maybe, especially if I'm walking on my heels, right, then all of that impact, if my glutes aren't being engaged, is just going onto my lower back and making my lower back do this. But if my glutes are engaged, then my lower back's more doing this. It's floating slightly bit more with the cushioning of the glutes. And the same is for the piriformis, is if I'm doing this constantly and my piriformis is going dink, 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 moving from side to side, then the best thing that we can do is start to release the piriformis and start to get rid of any compression that might be created from the tension buildup that might be happening. So when we start to release and start to go into these different areas of should we strengthen, should we release, I don't know. This is completely up to you. And again, comes back into the questions of exploration and asking yourself them, what, when, and where can I alleviate this pain? When is it coming in? And what type of pain is it? And starting to work at it from here. So these are kind of the basic areas of the lower back when we're speaking in terms of muscle groups. Again, in terms of joints, we've kind of covered the joints already. So it is the sacral and the lumbar spine. So it's those vertebrae, pretty much from L1 to 5 all the way down to S1 to 5 and maybe even the coccyx. And then also its interrelation with the pelvic girdle and the iliac crest. But the importance here is, again, the fuller functioning of everything and how we can get it to function more fully. So now we're going to go into some yoga asana and some movements that are going to kind of bring in a bit more glute activation in certain areas of the body to prevent any lower back pain, and bring ourselves into some back bends and some things that might cause back pain and ways we can alleviate this. So Mon, if you would like to step in. So just come into a hero's pose for now, just on your knees. All right, so first thing we're going to do is again start off from a tabletop and do some rolling spine back bends. So come into your tabletop position. Beautiful. And then from here we're going to do some spinal waves. So doing spinal waves throughout the spine is a great way to again gain that mobility. And I want you to watch Monica's spine. So go for it. Start for your cat-cows. So inhaling, opening up through the chest. And exhaling, tucking in the tailbone and rolling in. Good. Look at the shapes that she's creating. So now she's tucking herself in, making a C shape, one curve. And then as she's pressing out, we find neutral, and then she becomes a curve in the other direction. All right, now she's allowing for lordosis, and now she's tucking in. She might even be going into slight kyphosis, coming in, and then back to neutral, and coming out. Beautiful. Take a second. So, look at the shape that we're creating. Again, we have 4 curves of the spine. When Monica was doing those movements that she was just doing, she was taking those 4 curves and bringing them into 1 curve, and then bringing them back into 4, and then 1 curve again. And this 1 curvedness is what helps alleviate a lot of the pain, and muscular pain specifically, but also joint pain of the vertebra by bringing it into 1 curve. Remember, if there's a curve, then the compression is happening at the curved spot. But if you're doing a full curve, then all of that weight distribution is now distributed everywhere instead of into 1 specific location. So this is why spinal waves is so good and so healthy for any part of the back, lower back included. Go into your cow, so dropping the lower back down and allow for like full lordosis to happen. So you'll notice that here we've gone into like a little bit of lordosis and the curve is going up this way. This is something that we want to start to learn how to compensate for and to reduce in a lot of our movements. So if you come back into neutral, good, and tuck your tailbone in slightly, beautiful. So this movement here starts to create a little bit of a muscular tension here. This is again where the abdominal transverse muscle starts to come into play. And we start to create more stability in the lower back. There's also a slight bit of glute engagement happening. So again, engaging through the glutes. There's also a lower core activation as well. And these muscles, including slight engagements of the obliques, is what we're doing when we're creating stability for the lower back. But say we want to release the lower back a little bit more. Well, there's 2 ways we can do this. So we've already gone into the lordosis side of things, but if we want to do it in the opposite way, so come into your cat, so roll up. Good. So now what's happening is most of the weight is shifting up here and the curves come here. This is providing more of a stretch for this area of the body. Remember, the opposite way there was more compression. So we now started to stretch this lower back and where all the muscles are creating stability. So this simple movement of cat is creating a nice, not deep stretch, but a subtle stretch for the lower back. Cool, you can come back into hero's pose for now. So that simple movement, those simple tabletop movements are a great way to, again, start to activate the lower back, learn how to do these spinal waves, gain a greater understanding and movement pattern, and start to work with all the things that we've just mentioned right now. Again, keeping your spine moving is going to keep your spine healthy. But this isn't always the case, and this is when now greater work in the spine kind of comes into play. So we're going to start subtly first with baby cobra. So if you could come into lying down on your belly. Beautiful. And then lift up into your baby cobra. Beautiful. Squeeze your legs together. Nice. See if you can release your hands. Cool. All right, you can place them down for now. So what we're aiming to do now with our baby cobra pose is we're aiming to create stability once again in the lower back. You notice this is where the compression is happening. So I'm creating compression here. Again, we don't usually do this movement. Take a second. So we don't usually do this movement. This, for the most part, is very flaccid, this area over here in the lower back. But when we do a baby cobra, come up, it becomes hard and firm. And so we're starting to, again, build those muscles that are going to help keep the lower back stable. Again, there's also glute engagement. So Monica is squeezing in her glutes, and she's helping aid that by squeezing her feet together. But if you have too much compression, so if this is causing too much compression here for some reason, you can also widen your legs slightly. Again, not too much, just about hip width apart. And this creates space for the lower back. If ever you want to create space for the lower back, you can relax. And then just widen your legs slightly, and it will give more space for the lower back to have a more fuller range of movement. The next is a really nice release for the lower back is Sphinx pose. So come into Sphinx. Awesome. So Sphinx, again, keeping in mind the shoulders really nice and relaxed. But now we've allowed for this to relax completely, right? There's a little bit of compression here, but there's no tension, right? Remember, baby cobra is more about creating tension. This here is more about a release. So this subtle release is now going inside the body. So you need to remember that the spine still has muscles going on internally that we can't see. So the most obvious muscle that we can see on the other side is the abdomen, but there's still muscles deeper than that that are part of the core supportive team. And this core supportive team need to be released too. So this is a very subtle stretch for that. It's allowing for that lower back curve to just go in the opposite direction and get a little bit of a stretch here. Again, same thing with the legs. They can be together to make it deeper. If you bring your legs deeper, it'll probably create more compression here. And if you want it to be less, then you just bring it further apart. And then if you want to go up a notch, we can increase our Sphinx into seal pose by just straightening the arms. Again, you can see more compression here, but this also means that there's more stretch on the other side. And then we start to also address the abdominals as well and get a stretch in the frontal abdominal region. And then if Monica wanted to go up into an upward facing dog or cobra, then she gets more of that deeper stretch of the abdomen, so much more stretch here. Remember, stretching out the frontal abdomen can help provide more space for the lower back, especially on that interior curve, and help it gain more access to whatever it needs to relieve any sort of pain or impingement that might be going on muscularly, or even on a fascial or on a ligament or connective tissue level. For here, same thing can be applied. So if there's too much compression happening here, Monica can widen her legs slightly. Good. She can drop down her hips a little bit more. Beautiful. And then this also helps open the chest slightly, causes less compression of the lower back. There's not this impingement of the shoulders. It's a much nicer pose to go into. And if you do feel like your upward facing dog or cobra is causing any compression in the lower back, just widen your legs and make sure that you're keeping your heels up and not allowing them to fall in. But again, to deepen, you can bring your legs together and come into a deeper pose. What's good to remember about upward facing dog is it's something that we also want to warm up into. So we don't want to do it straight off the bat. Do some cobras, baby cobras, spinal waves, everything that you can first, and then start to go into a deeper pose like an upward facing dog. And then again, counter posing, super important. So first, tabletop. Spend a second in tabletop because Monica was hanging out there for quite a long while. Again, we don't want to completely go straight into the counter pose. Spend a few moments. What Monica is doing now is awesome. Allowing for these intuitive bodily movements is very important as a self-practitioner and also as a teacher. So just allow for intuitive body movements. And then when she feels ready, she can come into her child's pose and start to reverse the curve. Right, so remember, the curve was dropping a C shape kind of upwardly, and then now the curve is going this way, a little bit more inwardly. And she's going into more of like a forward fold than a back bend. Good. All right, now we're going to go into some spinal twists and then go into a bigger back bend. So if you could come into a seated position for me, Mon. Good. Cross whichever one, your left leg over your right. Yeah, perfect. Good. And then pull that knee a little bit closer to your chest. Awesome. All right, now we're going to go to a seated spinal twist. So now we're acting as a releasing mechanism. So spinal twists are stimulating of the digestive system, of the abdomen, but they're not engaging. It's just a stimulation. What we are trying to do is release, again, this transverse abdominal muscle. It's a good way to remember it is just a spinal twist is moving in the transverse plane, and it's reducing any sort of compression that has been happening in the transverse abdominal or any of the transverse muscle groups. So come into a nice spinal twist, again raising the hand up, tucking the elbow into the right knee or left knee, and coming into a nice twist. So as you can see now already, Monica started to create a little bit of a twist, primarily in the lower back, right? So most of the twist is happening here. It's not really an upward twist, but the twist is happening primarily in the lumbar and sacral region. And then same thing that we mentioned with the hips, when you're coming into these more relaxing, so this is definitely a releasing thing. The inhale and the exhale helps so much. So if she were to inhale and then exhale, twist deeper, and she can get a little bit of a deeper twist out of this. One more time, inhale, exhale. Good, that's where Mon's at today. So this little twist from the side of the body posture, what you can tell is happening here is we've just taken the pelvis, solidified it into the ground, and we've decided to twist the thoracic spine and use that to help twist the lumbar and sacral, which gets so much knots and compression. And I'll speak about why that is in a second. So you can slowly release. Take a second, and then also small counter twist. So like what Mon's doing now, this small little counter twist is pretty important because you take in a very deep twist. You don't want to go straight away into another deep twist. You just want to do a small little counter twist on the side and then bring it back. Again, equilibrium when it comes to the spine is very key. And it falls back into equilibrium itself. You just have to give it that space. So you've created compression. Remember, this is compression. So when I come back the other way, I want to release that compression that I've just created and do a small little side twist on the side. So let's come into a deeper spinal twist, maybe with the under leg tucked in. And you can just get a different angle of it. Beautiful. Inhale and exhale. So now you guys get to see the spine itself. And notice what's happening. So here's the lower back, the hips. They're pretty okay, right, in terms of their parallelness. Then it starts to come up and the spine starts to twist. So the twist is happening here, 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 here. And then this is again slightly twisted, but not so much. And then coming up into here, which is completely parallel again. So remember again, important with all spinal twists is keeping the shoulders parallel and the hips parallel, which they are perfectly. So Monica has it within her ability to bring the leg underneath. Sometimes people don't, which is okay, and they can keep their leg straight, and they can just do a more subtle twist, which we'll go into in a second. So you can slowly release. Again, returning to equilibrium and coming onto the other side. So notice how, yes, now we're relieving that. Good. So just as a subtler spinal twist, if you could just do a seated spinal twist for me, Mon, like with legs crossed, maybe. Like from a cross leg position. So just like half Padmasana or something. Yeah, exactly. So this is this more subtle spinal twist that you can do if the other ones aren't in your range or if it's causing a little bit of pain. This is also nice to do as a warm-up. So this is a great way to start to warm up the lower back, warm up the muscles, and get everything going before going into deeper spinal twists as well. Again, this is not in any sort of practice order. Monica probably she did a yoga practice before this, but still, don't just do them out of the blue like that. Kind of warm up a little bit more for yourself, and you'll be able to go deeper in them and also avoid the risk of hurting yourself. Next thing we're going to go into is some more spinal strengthening leading up into a back bend. So if you could come onto your back, come into a supine position. Beautiful. So from here we're going to go into Setu Bandhasana or bridge pose. So Monica is going to bring her heels close towards her buttocks. She's going to press the back of her hands into the mat, and on her inhale she's going to lift her hips up. Great. So this little baby bridge for Setu Bandhasana, you can see what's happening here. Pelvis up, postured spine, but because we're going against gravity, we're using our lower back and our glutes to squeeze in. So squeeze up a little bit more, press up as high as you can. And this is creating a very subtle back bend, but a back bend that we have to hold, right? Because if Monica had to let go, relax, this is what would happen. She'll just fall back down, right? So you have to use your back muscles to press you up. That's why back bends are, in a sense, strengthening of the back. Because yes, there's a flexibility needed, but remember, what are we compressing? We're compressing the back. That's where the flexion is happening. A back bend is actually a back flexion. And a forward fold is a back extension, and it's relieving of the back. And just for a second, I want you to think about that in terms of modern life. So in modern life, most of our weight is forward. And most of the time, our back is not being compressed. It's being kind of pulled forward. And so as a good release to that, we do a back bend. This is why back bends are so relieving and also energizing, because all this muscularity that has been compressed forward is now being opened and expanded. And you're releasing energies that are dormant and stagnant in the muscle and adipose tissue that are then now available for use. So this is why back bends can also be considered energizing. Again, one more time, this is just really, really good if you can make it even deeper. So if you can come into it with your hands underneath you, interlacing your fingers. Good, turn it into a deeper back bend, coming up onto the shoulders. Notice now how the curve has deepened. She's still pressing up through her glutes, keeping the knees in line. And this is her deeper back bend. So again, what we don't want here is we don't want to be falling. So we don't want, if you just kind of like let your back collapse a little bit, but keep your hips up. Yeah, exactly. So we don't want this. Look where her knees are, really not good. And then she's also just falling into her back. So we want her to press up. There we go. That's what we want it to look like. We want there to be engagement and architecture in the design of the pose. Good, you can slowly release. Good. And after doing that, because it is quite an active pose, it's nice for her to maybe windscreen wipe her knees from side to side or do whatever she feels comfortable with doing. Giving that lovely little hug in. Again, going with the intuition of what it feels good to do after these poses. How to move into the space that you've created is very, very, very important. Beautiful. Now the last one we're going to do is a wheel pose. So for wheel, this is obviously for, we could say, more advanced practitioners, but there's some key points that I want us to think about here. So the first thing before Monica does anything is where you're feeling your wheel pose. So wheel pose is very much not just a back bend. Like I mentioned before in the lecture about hips, if your quadriceps are tight, it's going to prevent you from going into wheel pose fully. So you really need to be open completely in the hip region. Make sure that you've got that stability already provided by something like a bridge. Then the arms get involved too, and we even touch on the shoulders a little bit. You need to be open through the shoulders. You need to have the arm strength. You need to have that neck flexibility as well, so that your neck can just hang without any pain. And then come into wheel pose. So remember, it's pretty much all the things you've spoken up until now, put into one little pose and one little stretch and compression. So Monica, if you will, fingertips facing, good, and pressing up. So again, you'll notice that she's created a shape. There's no point where it's just too much. So the compression might be slightly here. And then if you move a little bit more in, then the compression starts to move further down, right? So now if she wants to move that compression away, she starts to move this way. And this starts to turn the compression more into a chest opener. And again, you can already see why the hip flexors need to be involved here as well. What we don't want her to be doing is falling into the shoulders. She's very strong in the shoulders, so she doesn't need to worry about that. And she's got complete control. And then for her to lower down is also super easy. So slowly coming down. Good. Don't hold just yet, so just neutralize first. And then wait a second. So again, this idea of like bringing the knees to the chest straight away. Give yourself time, right? You've just created a lot of space in the spine. So let yourself sit in that space. Let the vertebra come to its natural equilibrium. Remember, we've spoken about this previously in other lectures on the spine, or maybe you've heard of this before. But our spine has this thing called its innate equilibrium. And this innate equilibrium is pretty much when you pull your spine out of place, whether you twist it, whether you bend it, back bend, forward fold, whatever it may be, and you bring it back to center, it knows how to recalibrate itself, and we just need to let it do its thing. So this is what we're doing in this sort of position now. And then now, it's cool. Give yourself a nice little hug. Again, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to do anything wrong. It's just to allow for the pose to kind of take its full effect. which is something that is very overlooked in yoga, especially vinyasa yoga, where we move from pose to pose to pose, is just to allow for their poses to have their full effect. Let them do what you kind of intended them to do, and let the energy flow through the body, and let the body do its thing and understand what to do with this excess space and energy that you've created. Cool. I'm going to do two more things. I'm going to do a camel and then a forward fold. So if you could come back up onto your knees. Good. Camel, very dangerous pose actually, especially in terms of transitioning in and out. If you need blocks, do you need blocks or are you okay? Good. If you need blocks, use blocks, plate them at the side of your heels, or if you need to, you can just come onto your tippy toes and raise your heels up slightly. For camel pose, the things you need to be careful for, one is the bend of the lower back and also the neck. So when you're going down, the neck is the last thing to go down. When you're coming up, the neck is the last thing to come up. When you're going down, your core is engaged. When you're going up, your core is engaged. When you're in the pose, you can release your core. But it's going to look a little bit like this. So as Monica goes down into her camel, she's going to keep a straight back. So engage your core and go down leading with, the legs, exactly. Finding your ankles or heels. Perfect. Then pressing through and then releasing the neck if she wants to. To be honest, I don't like releasing my neck at all in camel, and I don't really encourage people to. Because I feel like it is a lot of weight. Look at all that weight being bared there. I don't like it. But let's say someone has and we want them to move back out of it. Instead of pulling herself up from here, she's going to do it back in reverse order. So move the hips back. Good. And then slowly come back up with the head. But the more and more that I teach camel and the more and more that I see it happen, I'm just going to say it now. I don't encourage you dropping your neck. I don't think it's very good for your neck. At all. So I would say don't do it. If you want to do it still, completely up to you. My advice, don't do it. It doesn't do anything for the pose. So for the camel, what Monica might have experienced is a release then of the lower back. Again, a flexion of the extension of the abdominal region. And then also in the lowering and the coming back, what I love about this is you actually start to build a little bit of strength here in the lower abdomen, which is so good for doing any movements when you are lowering yourself down, because you start to learn that you don't have to bend yourself down, that you can actually use your lower core and your hip flexors and quadriceps and hamstrings to bring you down rather than relying on your spine, which again is mobile and stable, but if you use it in its mobility for stability, it can cause damage. Cool. The last thing we're going to do is a forward fold. So let's do a standing forward fold. Cool. So we're going to come into our Uttanasana. So from a mountain pose. So hips width apart with your legs a little bit more. Good. And then inhale, hands go up. Exhale, fold forward at the hips. Good. Beautiful. All right. So now let's look at this forward fold. So now all the back bending that we've done, we're now reversing this fold. In a standing pose specifically, there shouldn't be too much of a bend in the spine, to be honest. It should be more of a traction. So if you want to think of it, the forward fold is 2/3 hip, 1/3 spine. Right? So most of the things that are happening is this pelvic tilt forward. The lower back is only curving slightly. Right? Every single other part of the spine is pretty much postured. It's pretty much remaining in its curve. And that's why you can get a little bit of this spinal traction happening in a forward fold. Now, if I were to fold and I have tension in the lower back, it would look a little bit like this. Sorry to do this to you, Mon, but just, like that. There would be this curve here. I want to try and eliminate this curve by, again, using the hips more. And letting it become more like that type of movement where the curve over here is less. We want as little a curve in the lower back as possible, just for the sake of prevention of any sort of lower back pain. And then how long you hold the forward fold? I would say your forward folds are something you hold longer than your back bends. Because back bends, again, are more muscular, compression of the upper back. Naturally, we want this to be more released. So let your forward folds be something you relax into. Hold it for like 2 to 3 times longer than you would back bends, and do forward folds to counterpose your back bends. But for both, the most important thing that we're going to kind of end with in terms of demonstration is just coming back to neutral. So if Monica were to come back into her mountain pose, slowly, vertebra by vertebra. Good. Relax, neutralize, breathe. This is an important part of the journey, is this. So if you just have a look at Monica right now, she's neutral. Her curves are all where they need to be. Slight curve in the cervical spine, slight curve in the thoracic, slight curve in the lumbar, slight curve in the sacral spine. And now the body is balancing itself out. So if you've ever practiced Hatha Yoga, you'll know a lot of the sun and moon balancing out the body type of intention and theme that goes along with it, and how you always step back into mountain pose. This is the reason why, and I feel like we can learn from this when we do vinyasa. I just say we because I do also tend to teach mostly vinyasa style classes, is by allowing for a moment in the vinyasa for us to neutralize, especially in the spine. Remember, the spine is always moving. There is no way to avoid using the spine. So give it the chance to rest, neutralize before you do anything else. Just like Monica is doing right now, just allowing for all the effects of the back bends and forward folds to neutralize. And I promise you, it'll make you feel more balanced too. If you just go forward fold to back bend to forward fold, spinal twist, blah, 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 without neutralizing, your body and your mind, more than anything, is also going to be a little bit wavered. It might be really energetic, or it might feel a little bit dull, or just a little bit confused. But if you allow for this moment to neutralize and find your place of balance, then you will start to feel more balanced in your mind. Thank you, Mark. Good. All right, so those are the final little demonstrations that I wanted to do with the lower back. Keep those into consideration. The last thing I'm going to just speak about is contraindications and where we approach the lower back if there's been any injury. So like I said before, if there's been a herniated disc, rather get like a letter from the medical practitioner. Rather don't feel responsible for something like that unless you absolutely know that that person can cater for it, or that they've been told that it's okay to do certain movements, because we don't know. But if there's lower back pain, what can we do? Well, like I said, we don't know exactly what's going on, but we can give people advice like I've just given you. We can start to approach it from a when does the pain happen? What type of pain is it? Where is the pain? Does the pain move? What alleviates the pain? And also obviously what causes the pain. So these little questions we can ask ourselves and our students are going to help us understand what we can do with lower back pain and the way that we can address it. Then we just go at a very holistic approach. We start with all the muscles that I mentioned. We go into the psoas, the iliacus, the obliques. We see if they need release, if they need strengthening. You can tell, right? Don't be afraid to discern. So we are very afraid to judge a lot of the time, right? So someone maybe works out a lot, and you can see that they're obviously very strong in their core. But we have this fear of like judging them and saying, yeah, well, I don't want to make a judgment because, you know, it might be against their favor. But we're not making a judgment. We're just observing what's in front of us. It's obvious that this person is very strong and has a strong abdomen and core strength. So that means that they might need to release in that if that's causing any pain. It's not a judgment, it's a discernment. And the same thing goes for someone who doesn't. So someone maybe who's a bit put on, like has a little bit of weight, or maybe doesn't have a little bit of weight but just seems a little bit lacking in muscularity, and they suffer from lower back pain, make a discernment. Say, well, okay, it seems like maybe you don't have the muscular structure to help your lower back, so we're going to have to build on that. You don't have to tell them outright like that, but say it to yourself. It's okay. It's not making a judgment. It's just you looking at what's obviously happening and working from there. It's like if someone is a runner and they have a very high potential to have tightness in their hamstrings and their psoas. It's not like it's discriminatory against runners to say that they have tight hamstrings and problems with their psoas. It's just a fact of the matter that runners tend to have this. So you're just making a discernment. So make discernments not only in lower back, but in all cases, especially if you're working with clients one-to-one. If that's something you want to do. With classes, it's a little bit harder because there's a lot of people in the class. So there you just want to keep it safe by paying attention to the principles where we've just spoken about now. One, the principle of stability. So right, we do want to keep a stable lower back, engaging the glutes, engaging the lower abdomen, keeping that tailbone tuck, engaging the core, not going too deep into back bends, looking at where the pressure is being caused in the back bend, moving accordingly, moving the arms, moving the hands, doing what we need, not coming up into back bends too early, not doing back bends that are out of our reach, not doing back bends for the wrong reason, i.e. ego, doing it rather for the functionality, which is what? To stretch, compress, and then reverse, stretch and compress. To create strength, to create versatility in movement as well. If you're a movement artist, you want to bring that into your work. But do it all from having the stability first, and then moving into mobility, right? Get stable in your movements, and also get mobile in your movements so that they don't remain static and rigid, which can also lead to greater damage later on. And then the final thing that I'm going to speak about with the back is just giving it what it likes, and that is subtle movements. So spinal waves, very super simple things that you can do every day in your daily practice, is learning how to wave the spine, right? So we do cat-cows, but learn how to wave your spine from different positions. So if I'm in a standing position, let's say I'm here, right? And I start to wave my spine from my pelvis, and I bring my pelvis forward, and I allow for this little bit of lordosis and my neck to come forward. And then I just reverse the motion. And I bring my neck back, and I bring my pelvis forward. Super simple movements, right? Remain relaxed though. What this also teaches you is how to relax your body. And then you can start to bring the movement more further up, so you can start to use your hands to create a deeper movement all the way down to your legs, and then let that bring a deeper movement all the way up to your hands again. Again, this hunchback is controlled. I'm going into kyphosis on purpose because I want to. I'm sucking in my navel. I'm doing like I would be doing in a cat-cow. I'm rounding through the shoulders, and then I'm bringing the movement back. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm engaging my legs. I'm squeezing at the glutes, tucking in the tailbone. If I need to, I come up onto my toes if my heels are making my knees come out. And this simple movement is going to create stability and mobility in your spine. And then also switching up the directions. So if you want to start to move your spine from side to side, again, looking like a little bit of a lanky doll that doesn't have any control, let your spine do it, right? Again, as long as it's controlled, play. The practice that I'm going to give for you guys to do today at home, again, to take it a little bit extra further, is to do exactly this with your spine. Is, if it helps, put on some nice flowy music. So nothing too rhythmic, but something with a little bit of a, something a little bit symphonic. Put on some symphonic music, something that has a little bit of a flow to it. Close your eyes, relax your limbs, and move your spine. Right? Imagine like you're a snake. And see which ways you can move your spine. And remember, your neck is your spine. So see which joints lead your spine. My chin seems to lead the cervical spine, and it can also lead the entire spine if I allow it. And then switch to see what happens if I let my chest lead. So now my chest is leading, or even my shoulders. And see what happens if I let my hips lead. Now my hips are leading. And imagine and bring this, again, level of kinesthetic awareness into your body. Close your eyes. Picture this energetic ball entering your body, maybe starting at the head, and then going to the left shoulder and coming back again. And creating these spinal waves not only through the body or the spine, but through the limbs. And it might look like a cool dance move at first, but I promise you that it's really good for one, body awareness and body mobility. It teaches your body to when to be flexed and when to be relaxed, and helps you discern what engagements is again. So remember, this is the aim of these lectures as well, is to try and discern what is engagement over tension and complete release. And when you're creating these bodily waves, you're pretty much playing along that borderline. Because if I just relax, then that's my wave. But if I'm too tense, then I can't really wave. So I'm finding that level of engagement where the wave it's a movement that's been created. It's an energetic, dynamic movement, but then I just direct it. And same with the spine. It's a movement that's been created, but then I just direct it. And it's the different parts of my body. So try this. Close your eyes. No one's watching, I promise. Put on some music, like I said, and just let your body flow and play. And again, if you find an area that you like, so maybe I'm here and I'm like, oh, that feels so good. And I can move into that area and I can be like, oh, stretch, stretch, stretchy, stretch, stretch. Oh, so nice. And then I can move on to the next area and go maybe to the other side. And you'll notice that it's maybe not in both sides. And you'll just find areas that are relieving. So you'll be like this. And like for me, this feels amazing right now because my shoulders have been really closed recently. I'm like, oh, this feels really good, and I can stay here, and then I can switch it up and try something different. This is 1, good for your body. 2, good for your mind. 3, going to help you in your yoga practice. 4, going to help you as a yoga teacher, because you'll find yourself doing movement that you're like, oh, I can bring this into a yoga pose. And it gives you creativity in movement too, which is something that is sometimes very lacking in yoga, and most movement disciplines, to be honest, is creativity, like other than dance. But to bring more dance style creativity into your body and your spine, because your spine loves it, I promise you, your spine likes to move. The rigidity of the spine is often what causes the pain of the spine. Again, it's usually very stable. Sometimes maybe not in the neck, is probably the least stable part of the spine. Sometimes it's the most stable part of the spine. It depends on the person. But again, whatever your body's lacking, give it to the body. So if you've never done this in your life, then it's lacking in that area. So do it, as weird as it feels. Just practice it until it feels right. If it feels awkward, then it just means you need to do it more and relax into it more. And then the same with the neck. If your neck feels like it's just hanging everywhere, stabilize it. Be controlled in the shoulders. If you feel like you're constantly going into lordosis and you're walking around like this, tuck in the tailbone. Even when you're standing, bring it into a daily practice. Right? I have to do it myself. I've got multiple hypermobilities in my body. My knee and my lower back are probably the biggest ones. And so when I'm standing, I have to really think, or had to. Now it's become a lot less. But I had to really think that I need to do this instead of this. I had to really think that I need to do this instead of this. I used to stand like this. You laugh, I know you're laughing, but it's how I used to stand. Very, very weird bodily shape. And then it started to build over time until I got more awareness of my body and I realized, that's not how my body should be. So I start to just do it when I'm standing, waiting for a bus, when I'm in a restaurant. And then it started to increase my ability to move and gave me more awareness in my movements too. So now when I run, when I jump, when I land, when I dance, everything that I do, I have this level of awareness in my body that I know, okay, I'm in lordosis now, I'm not in lordosis. And it's also a very subtle, subconscious knowing that you start to develop just by being conscious of it first. And then once you feel like comfortable in your body, then it becomes more of a subconscious thing. Cool. So that all being said, play is so important, but with safety. So, right, we're bringing this childlike elements of play, but we're also bringing this adult-like elements of safety and understanding. So now we understand, we know how to be safe. Once we've had this stability and safety, allow yourself room to play and explore. And this combination and this balance will bring a lot more relief from pain in all of your joints. And also, just to be honest, more functional movements in your life and make moving a more of a joyous thing. So keep moving. Have a beautiful day. Thank you again. Thank you to Monica, who's again off stream, for everything that you've done and for all the back bends. And thank you guys for paying attention and taking time out of your day to practice something that is very beneficial for you. So take this home with you. Take this on your day today and have a beautiful day. Keep up your practice and I'll see you soon in the next video. Peace out.